Hidden FIA images just leaked and they reveal McLaren's top-secret 2026 car design. Oscar Piastri's name is all over it, but this version of the car wasn't supposed to exist. There are components in the blueprint that could violate next year's rules, and now the FIA is watching. If this is real, McLaren may have just exposed their entire 2026 strategy to the world. Subscribe right now, because what's coming next could change the championship before the first race even begins. Just days after the FIA quietly updated its internal systems for 2026 compliance review, a trove of confidential images surfaced on encrypted motorsport channels, and they left no doubt. Among the technical documents was a full-resolution rendering of McLaren's 2026 chassis layout, clearly labeled with Oscar Piastri's driver code. The image wasn't speculative. It was official. Metadata, engineering annotations, internal version tags, everything pointed to a legitimate FIA upload that was never meant to go public. And now, it's out there. The car shown in the leak is not just a basic shell. It includes core aerodynamic architecture, power unit integration sketches, and thermal distribution layers, elements that offer a window into McLaren's most guarded engineering priorities. For rival teams, this is gold. For McLaren, it's a tactical nightmare. Because when a car blueprint escapes into public view before even physical components are finalized, the entire development cycle risks being compromised, both technically and strategically. McLaren's leadership, including team principal Andrea Stella, has already moved to contain the damage. A digital lockdown was issued across all working departments involved in chassis and simulation design. Access logs are being reviewed. Internal security systems are being tested for potential data transfer breaches. But the bigger problem is not who leaked the image, it's what the image reveals. Because if even one component breaches the FIA's upcoming 2026 regulations, the team may be forced to redesign under full public pressure. The FIA, for its part, has not denied the leak's authenticity. In fact, sources close to the governing body have confirmed that the file was part of an early-stage review packet shared with approved compliance auditors. This suggests that the image was never meant for paddock circulation and certainly not public scrutiny. Now that it's exposed, the FIA is under pressure to assess whether McLaren's 2026 prototype, as leaked, meets every letter of the updated rulebook. And if it doesn't, penalties may follow before a single wheel is turned. Oscar Piastri's name attached to the image adds an entirely new dimension. For a young, rising star already viewed as a central pillar of McLaren's future, being linked to a potentially non-compliant car design could carry reputational consequences. Reports from inside the simulator division suggest that Piastri had recently tested a variation of the car, but whether it matched the leaked configuration remains unclear. If the version Piastri used differed significantly, it would signal a breakdown in communication between the driver team and the design office. The broader paddock reaction has been swift. Rival engineers from Mercedes and Aston Martin have already begun modeling the exposed shapes into CFD simulators. Because in Formula One, knowledge is everything, and even a partial glimpse of a competitor's aerodynamic vision can tilt the balance of pre-season development. For McLaren, the next few weeks will be about survival, protecting IP, locking down legality, and keeping their driver unit unified in the face of unwanted exposure. What was supposed to be a tightly controlled innovation cycle has now turned into a public spectacle. One leaked image has forced McLaren into a race against time, not to go faster, but to stay compliant. For Piastri, for Webber, and for every engineer in Woking, the message is clear: the countdown to 2026 just accelerated, and the world is watching. The most striking feature visible in the leaked image is McLaren's radically narrow side pod layout, a concept that appears to prioritize ultra-low drag over traditional cooling capacity. Rather than traditional undercut or high-flow inlet shaping, the side pods taper aggressively toward the rear, hinting at a shift in how airflow is directed into the car's radiators and thermal exchangers. This suggests the team is gambling on high-efficiency energy recovery to offset the loss in passive cooling volume, a move that could pay off in clean air but might struggle in traffic or high ambient temperatures. Just behind the side pods, the image shows a highly unusual floor edge treatment. Instead of the flat, continuous profile expected under 2026 regs, McLaren appears to have engineered a contoured step with integrated vortex generators. These small aerodynamic devices are designed to energize airflow under the car, particularly around the rear diffuser, and potentially recover lost downforce under the tighter ground effect restrictions. While clever, this feature could attract FIA attention if it's deemed to exploit unintended flexibility or boundary layer manipulation. Moving upward, the packaging of the rear suspension has sparked further interest. McLaren seems to be running a pushrod configuration at the rear, a design choice that sacrifices packaging compactness for stability during acceleration phases. What's more intriguing is the angle of the damper and the visible placement of torsion bars, which hint at a dynamic weight transfer strategy. This system may allow the car to squat more aggressively under throttle, shifting load rearward, but that must be declared and tested under the 2026 anti-squat regulations. Another key detail is the positioning of the MGUK and its adjacent battery pack. The leaked image shows the energy store aligned along the center line of the car but raised slightly above the traditional floor position. This could be McLaren's solution to the FIA's new battery isolation rules separating the energy system from crash-sensitive floor structures. However, this vertical elevation changes the car's center of gravity, and any instability introduced here will affect ride stiffness and lateral balance, particularly on high-speed circuits. Thermal management is also in the spotlight. The car shows signs of utilizing a bifurcated cooling loop, two separate paths, likely running for ICE and ERS subsystems. In principle, this helps isolate thermal stress and allows independent temperature control, which is essential under 2020 SIXS reduced airflow allowances. But it also introduces complexity. With fewer ducts and more packaging constraints, the margin for error narrows. If one system overheats, it can compromise the entire powertrain envelope, something that may have surfaced in Piastri's simulator sessions. Attention has also turned to the DRS and rear wing design. In the leaked image, the end plates appear to have microcuts along the trailing edge, suggesting an adaptive flow management mechanism. This may be designed to reduce drag spikes during DRS activation or possibly to maintain balance when DRS is off. But with the FIA tightening rules around active aero, any secondary effect that modifies performance without direct control input could fall under breach territory. If McLaren intends to defend this, they'll need bulletproof telemetry and a well-documented design justification. Lastly, engineers have pointed out a small but telling detail: the lack of visible mounting for a secondary front wing element. While the image may be incomplete, it suggests McLaren is experimenting with a simplified front aero profile, possibly to redirect more clean air to the floor and rear. This would increase straightline speed but reduce front-end grip, which could explain some of the oversteer characteristics reported by Piastri in testing. It's a calculated risk, one that could give them a massive qualifying edge or expose major race day vulnerabilities. Inside McLaren's technical operations, the leak has triggered a full-scale systems audit. What began as a routine design cycle has now become a forensic investigation into every stage of the 2026 car's development. Engineers are being pulled off their assigned streams to assist cybersecurity teams in tracing data trails, reviewing file access history, and cross-verifying which components in the leaked image match current CAD and wind tunnel models. This is no longer just about performance, it's about protecting the integrity of the team's intellectual property. In parallel, the aerodynamics division is working under unprecedented pressure. With several floor structures, cooling configurations, and aero appendages now exposed, senior aerodynamicists must decide what can be salvaged and what must be discarded. In normal development, these choices are made based on performance trade-offs. But now, the equation includes a public relations variable and a regulatory risk component. If any system shown in the leak attracts early FIA attention, McLaren risks losing development time to legal clarifications instead of engineering optimization. The structural engineering group is also facing hard decisions. The exposed central spine battery mount, while conceptually legal, introduces compliance uncertainty around dynamic load conditions, especially under the FIA's new rollover and frontal impact models. This system was still in simulation when the image was leaked. Now, engineers must assume that the FIA will request a full mechanical audit of that layout. That means crash testing, stress validation, and structural transparency all weeks, if not months, ahead of schedule. Meanwhile, the control systems team has entered defensive mode. The dual logic override boxes shown in the image represent a new kind of electrical redundancy likely designed for fail-safe deployment of energy systems. But depending on their behavior under load, these boxes could blur the line between safety logic and performance logic. That's exactly the kind of ambiguity the FIA will challenge under 2026 regulations. McLaren's engineers now have to document, validate, and prepare to defend their control architecture to the letter, because any gray area could result in disqualification or a development freeze. Simultaneously, tension is building in the simulator division. Oscar Piastri's previous complaints about brake feedback inconsistency and unstable rear balance are now being viewed under a different lens. Some of those issues could be linked to elements in the leaked design, meaning the simulator model may have been more accurate than the design team admitted. If that's true, it reveals a serious disconnect between simulation fidelity and engineering responsiveness, which could erode driver confidence at a critical phase of development. Andrea Stella and McLaren leadership are facing mounting pressure to reassert control over the program. Not only must they respond to the FIA's quiet inquiries and potential rule clarification requests, but they must also manage internal morale. Engineers who spent months crafting innovative solutions now find themselves defending designs in crisis meetings instead of refining performance. In high-stakes motorsport, this kind of psychological fatigue can cascade into performance stagnation, especially when rival teams are watching every move. And that's the most urgent threat. Every day McLaren spends clarifying, justifying, or softening their 2026 design strategy is a day that Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari spend simulating their own response, or worse, reverse engineering elements from the leak. McLaren's advantage, if it ever existed, is now compromised. The only way forward is to redesign smarter, communicate cleaner, and out-execute the rest of the grid under scrutiny. Because in Formula One, innovation is only as powerful as your ability to keep it hidden, and McLaren just lost that advantage.